All right. Well, hello, RV lifers, and happy Wednesday to you. We are back and better than ever in our a similar location here in our office, a little bit closer to the train. So hopefully we won't have too many issues with that today. We've got a few things to go over with you. Let's go over a couple of reminders first. Whether you're watching on the RV Life YouTube channel or the RV Life Facebook page, be sure and like, subscribe, thumbs up, all of those good things. We'll do this every Wednesday till the end of the season, till the end of August, essentially. August 31st will be our last one of this season. And we'll see about picking it up again next year. Couple of things to go over. And then today we're going to dive into some of the panel details or the details within the campground modals is what we call them, I think, or little sections inside the trip menu. The devs can all laugh at me for using the wrong term there. But before we do that, I want to touch on a couple of things. First of all, we did put up a brand new RV Life app video, a short video that explains how to use it. And I'm going to want to show you how to find videos from TripWizard. So let's jump out and share that screen real quick. And let me get there. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to move this window over. Remember to leave comments, any questions you have today, anything you want to get covered live today, leave those questions. You can answer, push those comments through both YouTube and Facebook. Jim, good morning from Alberta, Calgary, Alberta, and Granbury, Texas, right down the road from us. So excellent. How are you guys? Good to have you all here. Okay, so the first thing, again, we put out a new video, and if you're subscribed to the RV Life YouTube channel, you were probably already notified about that. But if you're in TripWizard, you're thinking, is there a video for this, or I need a little refresher on something, remember that you can always click on the little avatar character, which will pop your name out there, and go to Help. Now, I want you to ignore this Videos tab and instead come down here to Video Support, which will open to the RV TripWizard YouTube channel. Now, yeah, I'm mixing and matching here. We're currently on the RV Life YouTube channel, but I also have those same videos here on the RV TripWizard YouTube channel. It just kind of makes sense, right? And you can see right here, here's that new RV Life, using the RV Life GPS and Campgrounds app. Here's that new video. You'll find the whole series of product training videos across the top. There's some older speed training videos, uploads, YouTuber videos, etc., etc. But I just want to reiterate that those can be accessed right here with the video support button. Second, on our screen now, you'll see this St. Petersburg, this bridge over the 275 that goes over Tampa Bay. We had a question about that, and the question's kind of obvious here in that. Get this thing out of my way. The elevation shows that we're driving underwater. And you can see that that's negative 56 feet. So what we confirmed is what we thought. The topology, the elevation, the gradient, all those things are essentially based on the real Earth measurements, which for every other circumstance is perfectly accurate. But when we're looking at a bridge that goes over the water, it's not, right? It doesn't represent the bridge. It represents the actual topology. So we can see here that at this section of the bridge, it's negative, it's 56 feet below sea level. And I did some Googling for the fun of it, and it turns out Tampa Bay is pretty shallow, actually. So those are accurate numbers. We found this to be the case on most maps and mapping engines and things like that are showing this type of feature. Is it's usually the actual Earth properties. So I wanted to just close loop on that for those of you that followed that recently. Again, just with this in mind, of course, we can look at the gradient. That, again, is the Earth. But with this in mind, if we were looking at that and we were like, yeah, I need a better thought. I need to clarify that a little bit. We stress over and over again on this show, go to Street View, right? and take a look. See with your own eyes what's going on. Obviously, it's a bridge over the water. It's not underwater. You can see it rises up down here. Yeah, just when in doubt, check stuff like that. But I think you'll find on bridges, that elevation thing, obviously we can't tell what the grade of this bridge is, but we can see that there's trucks and all manner of traffic on here. And really the only thought that brings to mind is in Louisiana somewhere, I think it's Lake Charles, there's a bridge that's, for most vehicles, not a problem. But if it's a 1978 diesel VW Golf, little micro car, it's a problem. I think by the time you get to the top, I was in one, or my folks had one or something, and by the time we got to the top of that thing, starting out at full bore, which was about 70 miles an hour, I think we were creeping over that baby at like 45. So today's modern vehicles, modern automobiles don't have that problem. Neither will your RV. So, okay, bit of a sidebar. Before we jump into, well, one other thing, I want to see what we've got some questions here. So this is a pretty good question, Sandy, because there are some things in TripWizard that you can find, and then there are some that you just kind of need to Google and add them into your trip. Let me open another trip real quick, the one we're going to be jumping to soon, to answer Sandy's question, which is an article about traveling in Kansas. Mentioned you can find roadside attractions and curiosities and popular pit stops. That's not the trip I want. Hang on. I would say we're not really at that point yet that we have a lot of those things. We have some things, but me and my kid went on a road trip many, many years ago, and we looked at the largest rocking chair, right? Okay, I don't have that in here yet. We wish we did, but we don't yet. Now we have some things. If we look at our POIs here, and we'll clear all those fuel stops, I can see obviously big things like stores and whatnot. But if we get into some of these others, we've got zoos and museums and obviously restaurants, bowling alley, amusement parks, aquariums. So we've got some interesting points like that. But that stuff that's just on the side of the road, maybe circa circa Route 66 days, right? The largest ball of twine. I always go, especially Kansas. I think it's actually in Kansas, but we don't have that stuff here yet. We're working on processes that'll show that to you in relative to your route, right? I mean, if this route through Yellowstone, I don't need to see the largest ball of twine in Kansas, right? I need to see something near Sturgis here, or Cody, Wyoming, whatever, those types of things. So we don't have them there yet. Now, when you do find them, whether it's in a travel blog or a book, a travel book, or the 50 greatest things you need to see book or something, or an article, that type of thing, you can Google that stuff, get the address, or a lot of times you can actually just find it in here. So for example, you have to kind of know the name a little bit, but if I'm zoomed in on Cody and I have a specific thing that I know is around there and I know the name of it, it's called Frontierland, right? Or something like that. I can start to type in things and I can ignore the parks and come down here to places of interest. And, the Frontier Cancer Center is right there. Obviously, I would need to know the name of something relevant to what you're doing. But so in response to Sandy's question, yeah, kind of. If you know what it's called and you zoom in roughly on the area it's located, you can find it here. Maybe we'll search for Wild Bill's Cabin. Something like this. I can click on it, whatever it's called, right? Here it is, more details. I can add it to my trip, and boom, it's there. So hopefully that helps a little bit there, Sandy, on that. This is an excellent article, and I talk about this all the time. Gary says, it's been my experience that RV safe does not necessarily mean RV recommended. Yeah, or I always use the phrase RV comfortable. And so, Gary, the way to mitigate that type of thing is, a road is perfectly safe in that it supports your weight, it supports your height, and based on your length, there should not be a non-navigable turn within that realm. But we've talked about the roads like the 550 going up through Colorado, the $1 Million Highway. We've talked about this one before, where there's twisty, turny roads with no guardrail, right? But it really is RV safe. It's just, are you comfortable with that? Other things we've talked about are overhanging trees that really make that road a narrow road, much narrower than it really is because of the trees. And so all I would say, Gary, on this type of thing is since we're creating our trip ahead of time, let me get rid of this thing. Since we're creating our trip ahead of time, we should be vetting these roads and looking at them with satellite view, with street view, areas that are of concern to us. We need to investigate them a little bit. And that's the whole point and the whole goal of creating our trip in TripWizard, then navigating it with the mobile app, because I don't want those surprises. And so if I'm going somewhere I've never been before, we've looked at this example before, I can see that I'm leaving I-90, which I'm going to be pretty comfortable with, and I'm getting off I-90 going down this road, which is clearly through some rugged terrain of some kind. I'm going to want to know what that looks like. I like Street View a lot. Here's a hairpin turn. Let's go to Street View and see what this looks like. And it doesn't look that bad, right? This looks perfectly fine. It's a single lane each of the side. I've got a guardrail, but it might not look good. In other words, the idea is to go ahead and find out, is this route RV comfortable or RV recommended, or is it just RV safe? Our general rule here is that whatever roads we're putting in front of you, an 18-wheeler semi tractor trailer can navigate down. That's what the routing engine is based on. And so anything that it will route you should be that safe. That leads us also to make sure that your rig dimensions and things are accurate, right? Go into your wrench icon, go to trip settings, go to your RV info, and make sure the correct info is shown there. But a great comment, Gary. I like that. And we want to know where the actual largest ball of twine is. And I think I've actually done, I don't know. Let's take a look real quick, because I'm curious as well. Largest ball of twine is in Cocker City, Kansas. So your trivia question of the day is, the largest ball of twine is in Cocker City, Kansas. Now, I think I've read some wiki on that stuff, and there may be a ball of twine dispute. There's another one somewhere. It seemed like I dove into it heavily one day. So good stuff, good questions. Keep them coming. We appreciate that. The other thing I want to talk about before I dive into what we're going to be talking about, the details inside your trip, your campground panel here, inside the details and some of the nuance involved there. I want to shout out to Ellen. I talked to Ellen yesterday. Ellen's in her 70s, and she had a question about her subscription. We don't really have a phone line per se, but when somebody has a subscription problem, we do try to reach out. When money's involved, we want to be careful there. And so we called her, got it all sorted out. But I started talking to Ellen. Ellen is going to run circles around Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and every other Gen you can think of. She was currently in the middle of, she does all the trip planning. She's currently in the middle of this summer's trip, which is 4 months, 42 stops, and 120 nights. And she's planned it all out on TripWizard. It doesn't beat last year's trip, which was 5 months, 46 stops, and 146 nights. And she was already working on next year's plan. And she was just a sweetheart, and for every person that says, oh, this is too hard, or I don't know how to do it, or I'm not willing to put in the time to learn, there's an Ellen who is kicking butt with this thing. The funniest part about it, though, was I said, well, hey, Ellen, I'm every Wednesday in the summer, we're doing this show on Facebook, YouTube, where we help people and do product training and Q&A. She says, oh, that's fine. I don't need that. It was the best thing ever. And she really is. She's a pro. You look at those trips and she's just killing it. So shout out to Ellen. I told her maybe we'll get her on as a guest host or something sometime. So really great stuff there. So Jim's got a question. Will you have a program that will drive my route using Google Street View? I don't know. It's a good question, Jim. I mean, that's a good question, Jim. I don't know the answer to that. I know the devs are watching, and so we'll let them put that on their notepad and understand what that means and if that's something that could be implemented. It's certainly worth investigating. And in fact, many of the best features we have are features that came from customers suggesting them. Our people really do listen and they implement these things. If there's value added and it's an affordable, and even if it's not so affordable, if it's a good idea that's going to really benefit, they will implement it. So I love that. Let me see what this question is, John. Thanks, John. When I add a custom stop by finding the address, it appears in my trip identified by the address. I've tried to change the name, but when I do, Trip Wizard no longer recognizes it. So let's look at that for just a second. So we can see I've got this this Yellowstone trip, and it ends at Rock Springs in KOA. If I wanted to come over here and say, well, yeah, I need to go here to the Steinecker Reservoir, we're going to pull over and eat lunch or look out at the water, whatever, right? I don't know. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to right click. We're going to create a custom stop. Now, the first thing it does here is it gives that stop name of near Winnetah, Utah. At this point, I could just go ahead and change the name, right? And I can call it Steinecker Reservoir if I want to. And I can save it, and you can see now that it is added to my trip. Now, so yeah, John, so I just demonstrated. So John is saying that when he renames it, it's problematic. So if I came down here and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to call that Steinecker Reservoir. I'm going to call it Lunch. I think I spelled reservoir wrong. I'm going to call it Lunch. And so this actually is a thing we're working on. So it's recognized, but the route segment goes away right after renaming it. I've seen that happen. Our team is already aware of it. They're working on it. I think maybe it'll come back if I just reopen that trip. And John, this might have been what you were talking about, but it's also easy to just rename that trip or rename that stop at the onset while you're doing it, right? It's just as easy to do that. Let's see if it redraws that line here. Yeah, and of course that line comes back. So something about the rename temporarily wiggles it up a little bit. Our folks will fix that. But obviously now I've renamed it to Lunch. And we've talked before about how to change that icon. The reason it has an S as the icon is because it was called Steinecker Reservoir. So it grabbed the S. If I decide I don't want to call it S, right? I want it something else, I can go to the pencil here. And this comes with a little bit what we'll be talking about. Custom map icons. And I could pick a picture. Here, how about I can pick a picture, or I got icons down here, or I could pick a different letter. I could pick L for lunch. I could pick a coffee cup. It's not really coffee, but it's lunch-ish, right? And now I've got a coffee cup there instead of a plate, or a wine glass would also do it, but that's probably not what I want to be thinking about if I'm getting back on the road. But that'll be a good segue here into all the little features of the panel and things that we'll be talking about shortly. So let's, yeah. And so our team is well aware of this custom stop link bug that we just demonstrated. And you know, it's we've got an amazing team behind this, and we're not afraid to show you a little bug like that because we know it'll be fixed. We know we got the feedback from our members, and it's good to show sometimes, every minute isn't perfect. I kind of knew it was going to do that and had a suspicion that might be what John was referring to. It's a great way to show how to rename. It's a great way to show how to change the icon. And it's a great way to show that, hey, yeah, this might have been what happened to you. We have utmost confidence in our team and will continue to make those improvements and do those sort of things. They work tirelessly on this thing. And anyway, so that's that. Just checking comments here. And again, we also showed the better way to rename that is just do it on the fly, but it kind of doesn't matter, and you might change your mind, so it's all good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, questions are down for now. We're going to go ahead and just dive in and talk about some of what we just talked about here with these panels, this campground information section. The first thing we're going to look at here, and you can see right now that every one of my stops has a number of nights and a dollar value associated with it. Now, you can see my lunch stop doesn't have a number of nights. Why? Well, because I'm not sleeping there. I'm going to move on to going to continue to build my journey, and I'm moving on. I'm not staying the night there. The same with rest stops, fuel stops, largest ball of twine stops, largest rocking chair stops. We're not spending the night there. We're just going to go look at it, take a picture, laugh a little, buy a magnet, and move on. I'm not sleeping there. I don't need that. Conversely, I can add nights to an event. Let's if I have a rest area and I say, look, we're going to actually sleep there. Now, some of these rest areas have a certain amount of time you can stay and can't stay, and we're not going to be putting out our slides next to the semis and all that stuff. But if we're just going to pull in, crash for a couple hours in the confines of our RV, I can put that as a night if I'm staying overnight, right? So all that stuff. So we're going to get to that. But the reason for all that is because there's one stop here that doesn't have anything. And why is that? Well, it's the start of our trip. And we can see that, of course, there's no nights there. I'm leaving, right? There's no cost because I'm there. There's now, whether this is a campground, your home, your RV storage facility, wherever your trip's starting, there's no inherent cost with that location. So if we look at this, we can see all of my values are zeroed except my fuel, which is still $4. But I haven't used any of it, right? I'm starting out with 100 gallons, a full fuel tank. Let's start there. What if I'm not leaving with a full tank, right? Because TripWizard is going to show me where I need fuel, but if it starts out wrong, that's going to screw up my whole trip. And so I'm going to go out there, I'm going to turn the key, and I'm going to look at my fuel gauge, and I'm going to say, maybe it's half a tank, right? Maybe it's 50 gallons. Or I'm going to look, or I'm going to just think, with me frequently, I will fill up on the way into the house, and I know that particular fuel stop is 26 miles or whatever it is from my home. I'm going to divide that by, say, my 8 miles to the gallon, and maybe I'm going to put 97 gallons, right? 3, 8, yeah. Maybe I'm going to put 97 gallons, right? Or whatever. I'm going to do the math, or I'm going to go look at my key, just to make sure. The key check is not a bad thing because with somebody like, if you're using a generator or if you're using a diesel heating system or whatever, you might burn a few extra gallons there. And there's a way to calculate that if you're really into that. But I might just, in my head, have a good sense, go look at the key and go, yeah, you know what? That's 90 gallons. I just feel better about that number, whatever the case may be. The whole point is it might be 20 gallons, whatever the scenario is. That's my accurate starting mileage so that the rest of my fuel stops can be calculated properly. Here on this initial panel here, again, I don't need reservations. It's not a custom stop, so I'm not changing the icon. The start date could change. If suddenly this trip is got pushed back, obviously I would want to change the start date, which will then recalculate all the rest of my dates. I'm just checking comments here, make sure I don't miss anything. So in that initial starting panel, there's really only a couple of things here that I'm going to care about. Now, as I look at this and say, hey, of course, $4 is probably pretty accurate now, but a month ago, we might look at this and go, oh, wait, fuel is $6 a gallon or $9 a gallon or wherever it is you are. I need to change that if I'm going to calculate my correct fuel prices. So if I bail out of here, I'm going to go back to my wrench icon and my trip settings and my expenses. And here's where I'm going to set my value for this trip. Not every trip, just this one. And you can see I have the fuel set at $4. A miscellaneous, I don't have anything. Meals, I have $10. Now, there's really two, and that's just a number to throw in there, but there's two schools of thought on meals. Some folks don't put anything at all. They're like, look, I'm going to eat whether I'm in my RV or at home. I'm not counting that. Some folks are going to eat out a lot, take advantage of it, and not have to cook and all those types of things. And they're going to spend a lot more money on meals. So they're going to put a higher value and they're going to eat out a lot, right? And then some folks are just put a nominal number in there that more or less represents the groceries they purchase. So if I went out and bought $200 worth of groceries for a 10-day trip, right? I'll put $20, right? Or something like that. It doesn't matter. You can put zero, but that's what that number represents. And then, of course, my camping fees. Initially, these are all budget numbers that we'll see in a moment we can override. But $50 is a good round number. Corps of Engineers is $20. Luxury RV resorts are 70 or 80 or 100 or wherever it is. Wherever you're going, you can set this value. I just have mine set at $50. It's a good number to start with. But if I wanted to change that fuel cost budget for this trip, here's where I would do it, and I would save. Now, some of these values, fuel is a budget number. You can come back and retroactively change that value. In fact, if we add a fuel stop here, of course, this trip isn't long enough to generate a fuel stop for me. But if I was to add a fuel stop, let's just do that real quick. And there's a lot of layers to this stuff. Let's just add a couple of the big ones. Not zoomed in enough. See if we can add a few of these. There's nothing around here, is there? Let's add some more. Let's just add, we'll just add a bunch of them here. TA, Petro, I'm just picking the big places for now. Hopefully keep some of these things. Here we go. All right, so let's just say next to this KOA over here, I was going to go ahead and grab fuel on the way at this pilot. I'm going to add that to my trip. And after I fill up, so the one thing, after I fill up, if I want to take that receipt, I want to come in here and make it more accurate. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and click the top off button. So it's going to show me how much fuel I've used. Now, if I later wanted to override this with an actual fuel cost per gallon, I could come in here and plug that in. In this case, I rarely do that. Especially since I'm already on the trip. Maybe you'll save your receipts. Maybe you'll come back and do it retroactively. I don't care that much, so I don't worry about it. However, something I might do while I'm preparing this trip, and we're going to start up here with this next all seasons here. This is my first stop. As I begin to call or go online and make reservations, I can actually put in the actual value. So if I have my budgeted at $50, right? I call these people and go, all right, tax, title, license out the door, minus your FMCA discount or blah, 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 whatever it is $48.95, $48.97. All right, just to be original. or it might be higher. You know, maybe they've gone up. Maybe it's 63.75, and I can save it. And so for that stop, because I've made a reservation, I already know exactly how much that's costing me. I can go ahead and put it in. But let's not stop there. If I've made a reservation, why not put a reservation number in here, right? I can put reservation number, I can put confirmation number, and then I can put whatever I want to put there. I could put just a number, 8675309. I always use that. Doesn't matter what I put in there. I could even just put XXXXX. And one of the things that'll do for me is, you can see now I have a little calendar icon right here next to my number of nights. And so that's an indicator that I've made a reservation for that stop. I can just glance at this and go, all right, now I need to work on Indian campground. But if I'm going to use the field, if the information is available to me, why not put my confirmation number is, you know, a blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't want those. Whatever. Okay, so there it is. So that's something to take advantage of. So let's go back in that panel and look at every one of these boxes. As far as renaming the name, you know, if this is an actual RV park called All Seasons RV Park, I might not want to rename it. If it's been purchased recently and has a dual name, or anything, I could put near such and such a freeway, or last groceries expected to run out on this day, or whatever. That's something I'm actually going to want to put in comments. I'm generally not going to want to monkey with this name unless it's a custom stop or any of those types of things, but I could mess with it if I wanted to. We're going to talk about lock dates today. I've done a whole video on that. I could move this around by reordering. Now, if I wanted to reorder this stop, I can do it here. But I can also just grab the little braille here and just do it like that, okay? Just so you see that. Camping total. Meal total. Again, I'm budgeted for 10 bucks. Maybe we discover a great barbecue place down the road. We end up going eating there, and it was $48.15. Okay, there you go. Now, obviously, that's after the fact, so it kind of comes back again. How much do I care about that metric? With my camping total, I've made a reservation, so even before I leave, I know what that's going to cost, right? Now, if I just blank that out, it'll go back to 10 bucks. Miscellaneous, this could be anything. It could be a toll that you anticipate incurring on the way to this campground. It could be a fee, a dog deposit fee, 10 bucks per pet or whatever, right? So I might put 10 bucks in there because that's going to be, nobody wants to know what I would have to put in there really, right? But maybe I want to put that pet fee in there. Or maybe it's an upgrade fee to 50 amp or whatever, right? There's a million different combinations here. My fuel costs are automatically measured based on what I've told TripWizard. So let's jump out of here real quick. Let's go back to our RV info. And I've told TripWizard 100 gallons of fuel, I keep 30 in reserve at 8 miles per gallon. Okay. So based on the miles, which we see is 148, that's not right. 148 miles, it's calculating my fuel cost. And interestingly enough, at that fuel price and miles per gallon, it's basically, I want to say it's $1 a mile, but that factors in the camping total as well. It's just a coincidence in this case. But it automatically says, look, your fuel cost is going to be $73.96 because you've already told me how much fuel is and how many miles per gallon you get and how we know how many miles it is. So it can easily identify the fuel cost for me. And then, of course, give me a total fuel cost, which it rounds up. So again, is that an exact number? No, because we're figuring $4 a gallon, but it's a great budgeting number. All right, and that's what it's for. Reservation info we just talked about. Here again, and of course, I can override this, not so much manually overriding the total cost, but if I put in a camping value, I put in a meals value, I put in a miscellaneous value, and I put in an exact fuel number, that will automatically calculate. So we've got you covered whether you're budgeting up front, partial budgeting, exact dollars after the fact. I've got some customers, some RV Life Pro members, that when they get to their nightly stop and they're sitting around with their feet in front of the fire and doing whatever, they'll pull up their trip and they'll plug in the values for the day because they want that metric. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's look at coming up next. The number of nights is pretty obvious. It's the number of nights you're staying. Fuel costs, we've already talked about. Previous stops, fuel. So we don't have a bunch of fuel stops factored in here, but it would show us those various, how many gallons are used, the arrival fuel. Now, here's a great thing right here. So if I arrive at this campground with 81.51 gallons of fuel, that's not going to change, right? However, and in this whether you're a couple of scenarios where this will change. If you're pulling a vehicle or pulling an RV and you've got a truck and you use that truck to run around town, guess what? It's going to change that fuel. It's going to change that fuel capacity. Likewise, if I have a motorhome and I'm running the generator or the diesel heater, we've talked about already, it's going to change that fuel capacity. So if I want to change that, I can override that, plug in a new value, and it will then recalculate and figure out where my next fuel stop is going to be. Likewise, if I'm in a motorhome, I'm not adding fuel at the campground. But if I'm in a truck and I'm running around town, I might be topping off my fuel. And so suddenly I'm leaving now All Seasons RV Park with a full load of fuel. Again, in a motorhome, it's a less likely scenario unless there's a fuel stop right outside the campground. You just decide, hey, why not top off? We might utilize that. But those with trucks and they're pulling a camper, you could certainly see that scenario. And again, my departure fuel, this ties right back into that. If I arrive with 81.51, I'm leaving with 81.51, right? But if I was to top off my fuel, it goes right back to 100 gallons. Or maybe for some unknown reason, I added 5 gallons. And you can see my departure fuel is suddenly 86.51. I don't know, maybe you had a 5-gallon gas tank in the back and you decided to add it, whatever. But it will calculate it all for you. And then finally, we have our comments. This could be for anything. This could be campground charges more for pets. Great barbecue place down the road. Don't come in on such and such or enter the third exit, not the second. Or enter the third entrance, not the second entrance, because it's too tight and there's trees. Or maybe you saw that on Street View. Maybe the campground owners apprised you of that. Oh, you're in a motorhome? Well, take the third exit or entrance, whatever. Just any comments you find of value. You also might come back after the fact and add some comments that you'll later use when you sit down on Campground Reviews and leave your reviews, because you'll want to do that. In fact, you can do it right here from TripWizard. If I go to that All Seasons and I click on the little park info, and I can add a review, and I can, of course, it jumps out to campgrounds.rvlife.com, and I can begin to leave a review. And so what I might do there is I might reference some notes I had here. Staff was super friendly, park was clean, pool was closed, but it's October. I mean, whatever notes you want to leave, good or bad, to yourself, that might later inspire you to leave a review. And especially as we archive these trips, of course, we can take them once they're taken. You take them out of active status, put them in archive status. And so down the road, you can think, hey, where was that place that had that great barbecue or that great overlook or whatever? You can look at your notes and find that stuff. So that's where those comments will be really handy. And actually, I can hit park info right here. I didn't even have to jump out. I don't know why that failed. The only thing we saw a little bit different, if we look at these, we just looked at campgrounds. There's really a couple of other types to look at. Fuel we can look at, and fuel has all these same things, but you generally don't mess with any of them. Or 99 times, all we're going to do is come in here and top off fuel and move on, and it's going to recalculate our fuel stops. But there are other settings in here. I don't know, maybe you were at the pilot flight, maybe you went to a Buc-ee's, right? And you topped off fuel, and then you went in and loaded up on a bunch of Buc-ee's stuff, and you came out, you know, $110 poorer, and so we add that $110 to this stop, if that's what happens. So just a couple of interesting use cases for that type of thing. A much more limited selection. Just checking my comments again. A much more limited, and it's not all that limited. A custom stop has all the same stuff, but it has the addition of one more feature, which is that custom map icons that we talked about. You're only going to see that on custom stops. And as we said, I can pick a letter, I can pick a number, I could click this purple guy right here. In this case, we chose the coffee cup. Whatever icon floats your boat. And you also might have the need for a custom fuel icon. The generic fuel icons are great, but if it's a Pilot Flying J, or sometimes, and here's a great use case for choosing a different icon. Let's say, so I'm stopping at this pilot right here. Well, let's say I'm stopping at the same pilot on the way out. And actually, this happens at my place all the time. When I head out, we talked about that fuel place that's 26 miles down or wherever it is. I'll top off my tank always. And as I said, on the way home, I top it off. So if I have that same stop on my route, I can change that icon so it looks a little bit different in my map. So I'm not seeing, why is there two of the same icon bouncing around down there? It's confusing to me, but if I change the second one, I know, oh, okay, that's the one coming home. So a real good use case for that. Okay, that might be all I've got to say about those panels there. Let's just double checking real quick. This is a good time. Probably haven't had a comment in a while, so this is a good time for a last call on comments, or at least to encourage people to ask some questions now while you have a chance. We've covered just about everything on here. If there's anything here we didn't cover sufficiently, please advise that. Any other questions related to some of what we talked about earlier, or any other questions you have at all? Now is a good time to ask them. As a reminder, under your name right here, we have that What's New feature. So you'll see anytime something new has been added. So here's a good question. Any way to show time and distance on a route? Yeah, so I think what we might be asking about here, and we got a good question by Emma as well. Where would you add that fuel stop is closed down for cons? Emma, I might need some clarity on that question. So James, I think what you're asking here, obviously with each stop, we show the miles and the time. But that's for a segment. If you were interested in an entire, where this can be is if the problem with this, I think maybe you might be asking here, is that the minute I add a rest area, for example, to this, let's clear this. Let's see if we can find any rest areas. All right. So if I add a rest area in here to my trip, suddenly these two numbers are broken up. Now I know it's 101, excuse me, 101 miles to that rest area, and it's an hour and 41 minutes. And then from there, it's 48 miles and 47 minutes. The question is, how long was that whole day? And I think the only way you might be able to see that is to look at that in Excel, possibly. Let's see what that does real quick. I'm going to open that. You can't see that right now, but let me open it in Excel first and see what I've got. Now it doesn't look like it combines the whole day. It does combine the whole trip. However, we're already doing that as well here at the bottom. 999 miles, 17. I guess it does show the time. Let me just double check that, folks. Sorry about that. So we see that that's 999 miles. And yeah, I'm not seeing a total time there. So James, my answer would probably be that you're seeing that miles and time right here in the menu from to each stopping location. Okay, so let me so Emma's actually asking about, where would you add that a fuel stop is closed down for construction? I gotcha. Okay, I know what Emma's saying. So anytime you have anything that you think our team should know, whether it's what Emma's saying, a fuel stop that's closed down due to construction, a campground that's permanently closed, a campground name change, a campground that's not there, anything you might run across that you think, hey, I'd love to help other RVers with this. Who can I tell? And you can come right back to your profile, go to help, go to contact us, and let us know right here. We do have a special tab for missing parks, which you can double check that it's really missing. But otherwise, contact us. We would love to hear from you. We get a lot of great data from our members that use the product. And so, Emma, that's exactly what you're asking. Thanks for that. John, selecting top off is not intended to change the fuel cost. Absolutely correct. It is not anything to do with changing the fuel cost. It's simply to let TripWizard know, when I was here, I topped off my fuel. So now go recalculate those other stops. Let me see if I can do this. Let me kill this fuel stop real quick. And I'm going to start out with only 20 gallons. And then I'm going to let's add some big miles to this thing. Turn our campgrounds back on. And grab my favorite Albuquerque campground, Route 66. Shout out to Carlos if you're watching. I know he's not because he's too busy. I'll say stay 5 days. And my goal here is to actually show you some fuel stops. Now, we have to be careful because sometimes they get behind other icons. And of course, I have to drive. Let's double check what I've got my settings at. Let's just double check. We'll try to get these to show more frequently. I want to show my fuel warnings are set to none. That's a good start. Let's go to multiple. So there's a good little catch right there. So we can see here my first fuel warning. Looks like it's right here. My second fuel warning is here. And so the idea is that once I add a fuel stop here, let's just see if we can do this. Try not to muddle through too poorly here. Let's add some fuel. All right, so let's grab this fuel stop. I don't even care what it is. I'm just going to add it. Let's see, what's this one called? Longhorn. All right, so I'm going to add this fuel stop. This was before Longhorn, so after Grizzly. Now, you'll see my fuel warning didn't go away. Well, because I haven't done anything yet, right? So now I'm going to go to that fuel stop. I'm going to top off my fuel. I'm going to save it. And now my fuel warning is gone. And now my fuel warning has been recalculated to the next. From that point, it says, okay, now I know where you got fuel. Let me show you, let me update the location of that next fuel warning. And so now that fuel warning is a little bit, it's right here. So I would once again find a fuel stop close to there, top off the fuel, and it will show me the next one. As long as you know your capacities and your miles per gallon, you can, and you're in a, depending on your vehicle type, you can bank on these fuel stops 100%. I have for years. We traveled with a 43-foot motorhome and didn't bring a toad, did not bring a vehicle at all for 3 years. And so we just, I planned every fuel stop and hit it like money every single time. And then now if you're pulling again, we've talked about if you have a truck and you're pulling a trailer, fifth wheel, travel trailer, whatever, well, you can run around and get fuel when your camper's parked at the camp. So that's a factor you have to bear in mind. But if you're planning those fuel stops or you can count on them. They'll be exactly, you'll need fuel exactly when they say you will. So I hope that helps on the top off and how that's supposed to behave. Obviously now we can, if I was, well, I set that one to 20 gallons to show I had a slightly different tank, and it recalculates. If I went back and said, oh, you know what? I went back out and I actually have 80 gallons. Well, I would just delete this Conoco, change my 80 gallons, and it would recalculate my fuel stops, and I would go pick new ones, right? All right, let's look at Sandy's question. We've got a lot of questions. I love it. What is an easy way to look at a campground and see how far off the highway it will be? Save it as a stop, or is there another way? Yeah, so there's the way to do this, I think, is to rely on our satellite view and street view. Let's look at this KOA right here. I wish I had a better example, but let's look at this KOA. This is fine. So, you know, at the 30,000 foot view, this thing looks like it's sitting right in the middle of I-80, right? Well, obviously it's not, but how far off is it? And so I can see here, okay, there's a service road and it's actually off the service road. Now, if I want a little better view of that, I can go to satellite view and I can see, all right, there's the campground. It looks like a little road off the service road, which is pretty close to the highway. You know, I'm not going to be hearing highway noises here. Looks like I might be hearing refinery noises. And there's usually a train track nearby. I'm not sure what this is, if this is an ATV course back here or just trails, but so that I can tell how far that is. If I really want an even better sense of that, I'm just going to come down to street view and we'll try to get another sense of what that looks like. Okay, not really a refinery, but maybe a little noise coming from there. I can see there's the KOA sign, and so we can see that that thing is over there. So, you know, that's, to me, is still the best way to gauge exactly where something is. If I wanted to do the same thing with Route 66, sorry about all the zooming. You know, I can see that there's a huge casino and parking lot up here, but that the park is actually set back and in fact has a great west and southwesterly view of the landscape. And, you know, I just get a sense of exactly where I'm going, what I'm doing, where things are, using those types of views. So I hope that helps. Let's look at James. If I plan a route beginning to end and I want to figure out 5 hours, 300 miles or so, that I can find a good place to stop. James, you have just entered the wheelhouse of RV Trip Wizard. The number one feature, in my opinion, let's go back to a standard, and we call it the driving radius. Let's make sure I have it turned on. Driving radius. All right, we're going to turn it on. We're going to turn on the advanced radius. And I'm going to show you a couple of different settings. We're going to start with 5 hours, which is usually what I already have mine set at. Avoid ferries is fine. Show advanced radius. Average 5 hours. That means I'm going to get, I'm going to get one driving radius. So when I leave Heartland RV Park, this radius shows me exactly where I'll be in 5 hours based on the average speed I put in. I kind of glossed over that a little bit too quickly. Let's jump down and see what my average speed is set at. 60 miles an hour. 55 or 60 are probably the two most common numbers. My rule of thumb is if it's just you and the spouse, 60 is probably good. If it's kids and pets, go to 55, and then you tailor it from there. If you like to stop and look at every thing that goes on, hey, let's pull over and look at that, and then bump that down even further, say to 50. If you just want to moto and make tracks, 60, 62, 65. Again, we're talking an average speed, which means when you stop to make lunch, that's coming down. When you stop at a rest area, that's coming down. When you hit that stretch of 67 miles an hour, it's going up, those types of things. So 55 or 60 is the most common. So that's our gauge. If we show hours, that's what that looks like. And we can see that whatever stop I choose, let's choose Indian Campground, that's 5 hours in every direction. And you can pretty much bank on that. And that's exactly how you build a trip. Let's just say, Jim, that I was leaving Route 66 and wanted to know, hey, where should I go next? This is 5 hours in any direction. I know exactly where to find a park. Amarillo, and coincidentally, 5 hours times 60 miles an hour is 300 miles, but we'll look at miles in a second. Amarillo, Pueblo, Flagstaff, Juarez, I mean, any direction, that's exactly what it is. If I wanted to see that in miles instead, I can choose miles. And I actually have a couple of options here. I could put 300 miles in every single spot and show one radius, or I can kind of create this pocket and say, look, I'm willing to drive a minimum of 250. My ideal mileage is 300, but I'm willing to drive 350 if it means getting where I want to go. So I put those values in. And now I've got sort of a little pocket here. So if I leave Albuquerque and we said that my ideal was that middle, that 300, I can come in here and see that that puts me smack in Amarillo. Well, if I decide, yeah, you know what, I want to stay outside Amarillo. Here's my 250 mark. Or no, I want to scoot through there and be on the other side that evening. Here's my 350 miles. Now let's turn on some campgrounds and see what my options are. And of course, we see that here's my 250 option. And here's my, my 350 option. Maybe this one below it. But where the action is really right at my 300, which is all in Amarillo. So that driving radius. Now we also have an as the crow flies version of that, which is when you're doing the mile rings, is maybe a little easier to digest. However, that comes with a caveat, and that is it is as the crow flies. So if your road is twisty, turny, windy, it's going to be a little bit less, it's going to be a longer drive than you anticipate. But those are really the three ways that we can show you exactly where you'll end up. It's the #1 feature of RV Trip Wizard. It's called the driving radius. We've got a video out there on how to use it. That should be exactly what you're looking for. All right, love that question. When searching for POIs, do they populate as a list? I can only see them individually. Am I doing something wrong? Hey, Jamie, by the way. Let's look at that a minute. POIs. No, they don't really they don't populate in a list the same way campgrounds do. So if I look at campgrounds, let's kill all my filters here and turn them back on. you know, I'm not only going to see them. Let's just focus on where are we? Albuquerque here. I see them on the map in Albuquerque, but I see them as a list as well. And when I highlight them, you can see the little icons bob up and down. On points of interest, no. I just select the ones I want. Aquariums, amusement parks, for example. Let's turn off, oh, actually one at a time. Let's turn off campgrounds for just a second again. And I can see, okay, there's one aquarium there. There's plenty of amusement parks, restaurants, that type of thing. But they don't present as a list. You would have to click on each one. So that answers that, Jamie. Good question. Let's see. Sandy's question. I wasn't answering for noise, but about COE parks, country parks. Oh, that's a great question, Sandy. A great clarity to the question you asked. And I will actually pull up, see if I still have it, my own example here. So we just recently stayed at a Corps of Engineers park in Oklahoma. And oh yeah, I butchered it up and messed with this trip for something else. I can still find it. And so I think it was, here it is. So there's a Corps of Engineers park here. Let's go show that real quick. And turn the campgrounds on. And in fact, we're just going to pick Corps of Engineers. Of course, there it is. And we can add that to our trip. We'll stay 3 nights. We'll get rid of this Oklahoma City. Okay, no route available without an unpaved road. And of course, we see this a lot. There is no unpaved road here, but very often the turn into a campground might have a little unpaved section, a gravel leeway or something like that. But Sandy, obviously we're looking at this going, geez Louise, what is this route going to look like? Am I going down a country road the whole time? And I can tell you from this example, no, but I will show you an interesting trait here. Obviously, I did the same thing. I used my satellite view. And I got in here and I looked at this thing. And it's actually very interesting. East of this 2790, it is an unpaved road. Yet west heading to the campground is not. And so I was able to get a sense. You know, one of the things I'm looking at here is I'm going through this little town. Well, what does that look like? I'm driving through this little small town. Here again, we rely on our satellite view and our street view. And I took a good hard look at this before I made this route and decided, yeah, okay, this is the way to get to the campground, and this street is plenty wide. I'm not going to go tearing through it 40 miles an hour. We'll go nice and slow, and it's fine. Turned out to be a nice drive. The little people that were hanging out, waving, whatnot, you know, no big deal. But anytime you're going through these types of things, you want to vet those things carefully and make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. Obviously, this is way off the highway, but none of it was really a problem. And obviously, I'm coming into this entrance of the facility. I can see, I want to just get that measure of comfort again and take a look. And sure enough, there's the entrance. Of course, I looked at this and saw, oh, great, it's closed. But, you know, this could have been an off season. Sometimes you got to look at the trees and different things to decide when this was taken. You know, is it off season? Is it late in the year? Is it closed? What was the scenario? But it let me make a reservation, so I wasn't too worried about it. But again, vet that stuff with satellite view and street view. There's almost nothing you can't do to ensure the integrity of your route. Hope that helps. All right, let's see what we've got. How many miles and such gas am I wasting to get to certain campgrounds off the path? So one of the things you can do is determine, you know, mileage here. So if I look at this trip, obviously I can see that this trip was, well, not San Antonio. This is actually DFW. but that's beside the point. You know, let me back up and show you this. This is a pretty good question. Let's say I'm in San Antonio. We've just talked about the driving radius, which I think I turned off in this example. Let me show you this. This will help. Driving radius. I'm going to switch back to. I'm just going to do the 1 4-hour ring. Let's see, show advanced driving radius, hours per day, 4 hours, 58. Okay. So if I'm leaving San Antonio and I know at the end of the day, I need to be around this area somewhere. We can see where my route is. We can see where the end of my day is. But now Sandy's concern is, whoops, let me clear my filters, is, yeah, but I don't want to go 20 miles off the highway to get to this campground that looks like it might be fine. So one of the things I'll do here is as you click on these little campgrounds, they give you a mileage rating. So let me just check one right here. Okay, so if this campground is 232 miles from San Antonio, this one using the road is 237. So that tells me that's about 5 miles off my route to get to this particular campground. Similarly, this campground, 234, is maybe roughly 2 miles. Again, having established that this one basically right on the freeway is at 232. Now, obviously, I'm driving a little bit farther, so I know this is probably slightly less than 2 miles. But these miles are relevant or relative to whichever you have selected here on the left. So these miles are relevant to or relative to my San Antonio departure, but I can use them to determine the miles. If we were to back this up and say, well, you know, this city park is fine, and it's at the edge of my driving radius, so it's the right amount of time, but how far is it to get off of this thing? Well, all right, if we look at this stop is 237, this guy over here is 243. It's going to, again, we're about 5 or 6 miles to get off the road and get to that. Now, obviously, the minute I add that, it's going to create that route. And let's just do that for fun. Let's just say we're going to stay one night at that city park. Whoops. And now it actually reroutes me. It says, fine, we're going to go down this way. But when we leave the next day, we're going to hop on another route and save a little time and get you back on the freeway. And obviously, we've had a whole session on drag routes and route manipulation if I didn't want to do that. But that's a way, Sandy, to see how far things are off the beaten path. Yeah, and so to answer that question, miles are always measured from the item you have selected in the trip menu on the left. And so if I have Dodge City selected, we can see that that stop we clicked on a moment ago, which was 237 miles, is now 16 miles, because that's how far it is from Dodge City. If I focus on San Antonio, again, that park will end up being 237 miles. So that's where the measurement is taken from. If I was to create, now, Sandy, this would be an extra step, but you might find some value in it. If I really wanted to be precise, or maybe there wasn't a campground in a handy location, right? I could come in here, temporarily create a custom stop right here, and now highlight that custom stop, and now take measurements from that. Okay, it's 12 miles off the beaten path. That one is 12 miles off the beaten path. That one is 11 miles. Again, we're looking at that 30,000 foot view. The minute you zoom in, things change a little bit, but these are relative to that spot I've selected. And once I've decided on a campground, I can go just delete that. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. Okay, good questions. We'll throw out another last call for anyone else that has any questions they would like to get answered today. Good, excellent. Sandy, those are great questions. It's something that doesn't come up a lot, but it's actually a really good insight and a really, really something to think about on how that diversion off your route is going to affect your time and how much hassle it might be. So good stuff. Really good questions there. Okay, so last call. Reminders, obviously, YouTube and Facebook, like, subscribe, thumbs up, all of those things. We'll do this again for a few more weeks till August finishes out. Yeah, that is a good workaround. So we'll do this till then. I don't have anything else to add. We'll be here next week. It's Wednesdays at Central Time. Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central Time. We'll do it all again next week. Hopefully we'll have some fun stuff to talk about. Bring your questions, and we will call that a wrap for this week. Thanks all. Thanks for your participation, your questions, and we appreciate you guys so much. I know our developers and our entire team, all the way up from marketing to ownership to support, the folks in support work their butts off answering questions and trying to make sure you guys don't go without the answers you need. So we appreciate them and really everybody involved. So it's been fun. We'll do it again next week. And yeah, gas prices are coming down, but 20 miles out of the way can make a big difference. So especially at a whopping 7 or 8 miles to the gallon, right? All right, it's good. It's been fun. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week. Bye.